Hey guys, I have a super easy method to make your eBay photos more appealing. If that sounds interesting to you, stick around. Hello everyone and welcome back into the channel. If you're new here, my name is Andrew and this channel is all about reselling. So along with my wife Jessica, we run a full-time online reselling business named 5 Little Ducks Resale. That's where we go to thrift stores, estate sales, and garage sales, and we pick up items for cheap, and then we flip those items online for a profit on sites like Mercari, Poshmark, and eBay. So when it comes time to take pictures for my eBay store, I do admit I'm a little bit of a traditionalist. I do follow eBay's guidelines in the sense that I do shoot in the 1:1 aspect ratio, so they're square photos, and I do have a white backdrop that I use in my photo studio. I don't use any special fancy camera to take my pictures, I just take them all on my iPhone. But despite having that good setup, I was noticing that the picture quality was not as good as I was hoping for. In fact, when I was looking at the pictures on my computer, they appeared kind of dingy and dark, and I was wondering what was going on. So long story short, when you're shooting with an iPhone, there's a lot of automatic adjustments that are going on. And one thing that the phone does account for is brightness. So when you're shooting against a nice white backdrop, you're getting a lot of light coming at your phone, and it tends to darken the image to automatically expose for that particular scene. Now that's good under most circumstances, but when you're shooting basically product photography, that can actually be detrimental to the image quality. So I stumbled across this free program, which is very similar to Adobe Lightroom, and it's called Darktable. And in working with the program, I've actually developed a really quick 3-step process to take your photos from dingy to bright and alluring in no time. Check it out. Hey guys, welcome to this tutorial. So this Darktable application is 100% free. You can absolutely download it right now. It's at darktable.org. You're going to hit this web page here. If you click on the install link on the upper right, you'll see that it is both available for Windows and Mac. So again, I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of how to install the program. Hopefully you are already familiar with that. I'm going to fire it up on my end here. Now this also assumes that you already have the images that you're wanting to edit already on your computer. So when you fire it up for the first time, there's a lot going on here. We're only going to focus on certain parts. We are right now in what's called the Light Table module. You can see here in the upper right that the word Light Table is highlighted. And so this is where we do all of the importing and exporting from the program. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Add to Library button here in the upper left, and I'm going to add the photos that I'm going to be editing. And as you can see here, there are about 36 images. We have a Hot Wheels car, we have a Kermit, we have a Miss Piggy, we have a Ryan's World action figure, and a couple of pairs of jeans. So again, this is where all of the photos are imported. We can scroll through here and kind of view them. It's more like a catalog than anything else. You can go ahead and rate them. If you were using this for photography, you could sort them by color and whatnot to make them more easily accessible. However, for this specific purpose, I don't do any of those. This is just basically an import and export module. So from here, I want to go ahead and start editing. Let's get a move on this. I'm going to click on the first image here. It's number 1 of 36. And from there, I'm going to click on this darkroom word up here, and it's going to bring us into the darkroom module. And this is where all of the editing is done on the pictures. Now, one thing to note is that the images that we're going to be editing, all of the changes are non-destructive. In other words, all of the changes that we're making to this image are saved in a settings file along next to the original image. So the original image is not touched in any way. So the first thing that I always do in all of my edits is I click right here on this toolbar here. This is where all the major tools are located, right in the center where it says tone. And then that will show me a list of options that I have. And the one that I'm going to be dealing with is called tone curve. This is always my number 1 step. So you see here I have a diagonal line going from lower left to upper right. I'm going to start in the upper right. You can see here that when I hover my mouse over the very top, you can see that there's that little white button that appears there. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to drag it slightly to the left. Now, as you can see, as I drag it, it's actually brightening up the image. So I'm going to kind of overdo it here, but you can see the effect that it has. I always slide until that little spike here, this little spike in values on this little histogram. This is what this value is called, or this little graph is called a histogram. I'm going to slide this image, or I'm going to slide this little slider up at the very top. I'm going to keep it along the top edge just until before it hits that little spike. So just to talk quickly about this histogram, what this is a graphical representation of the colors and brightness values of your image. So we can see here that the lightness values are on the right, and then the midtones are in the middle, and the dark areas or the shadows, those are on the left. So this little spike here represents all the white areas in the image. And so I don't want to mess with those too much. I just want to bring this just to the right of that little spike. Again, we're going to do this for each and every image. Now the very bottom, we're going to take that, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to click and drag slightly up. Now what that does is it actually softens the shadows just a little bit. Now as a function of moving this top one over to the left and moving this bottom one up, now it looks more saturated than what it did before. And so we're going to have to now adjust for that in the next step. So we're done in the tone area. We're going to click on the next one, which is color right here. And we're going to find one that says color balance RGB. And we're going to click on it and then scroll down to where we find global saturation. We're going to take this slider and drag it down to where it's -25. And it probably won't be exact. That's fine. It's kind of a big scrubber. And once it's close, you can let go, and that's probably good for now. If you are OCD and really want it to be -25, what you can do is click on this little triangle here, or actually right-click on the triangle, and you get this little line that's now attached to your mouse cursor. This is just a fine-tuned control slider. So you can see where that -25 is actually going down in hundredths of increments, as before it was going in much larger values. So this is a way to just fine-tune those numbers. The difference is very negligible when you get into the hundredths of values. So this -24.95 is definitely sufficient. So that's about it. All I'm doing is dropping the saturation a little bit on this image. Finally, I'm going to go to my base module here, and I'm going to find white balance. Now, without getting into a whole spiel on what white balance is, all this tool does is it wants to kind of recalculate your image and kind of refine it back to what the colors really should be. And by doing this, you click on this little eyedropper tool here, and it wants to sample the entire image. That's not what we want. We're just going to find a nice white area of the image to kind of guide the computer to say this is the actual white point. And so we're telling it there, boom. Now, when we apply the white balance, it's always going to check this area first, and that'll become clear here in just a second. But that's it. Those are the three areas of this program that we're going to be dealing with as far as editing. We're going to be editing the tone curve, and that's under this tone. We're going to be editing the color, so we're dropping the saturation, which is right here under global saturation. And then again, we're changing the white balance. All right, that's it. Now, the beauty of this program is that I don't have to make those same adjustments to all of my pictures in this group. So I typically will focus my workflow on just this subject only, so just the Mario Kart Hot Wheels. So now that I've made the adjustment in one, I can now copy and paste those same adjustments over the entire group. And to do that, I'm going to hover my mouse down here in this little film strip, and you can use your scroll wheel to kind of navigate around here. As long as my mouse cursor is hovered over this one, I'm going to hit Control-C on my computer, which is going to copy. If you're on a Mac, it's Command-C. And then I'm now going to hover my mouse over this next picture. I'm not clicking on it. I'm just going to hover my mouse cursor over it. And now I'm going to Control-V, or paste. If you're on a Mac, it's Command-V. And now you see that's lightened up. It's lightened up super easy. And I'm going to just literally hover my mouse over each successive picture and apply that paste operation. And you'll see that it lightens up. Now, the one downside is that it does not copy over this white balance option. So you have to now go back on each image and quickly just click that white balance. And because it keeps the same position from the previous picture, it's super easy. We're just going to click the white balance tool. As soon as it adjusts, we're going to click off to the next one, and so on and so forth. It's actually a very easy operation. And with this last one here, that's it. We've edited all of those Mario Kart images, all right? So let's go ahead and do the exact same procedure on these Kermit ones. And as you can see, they look fine. You know, if you were looking at this online, it wouldn't be a bad image, but I think that it could definitely be a little bit better. So again, step one, we click on tone. You can see here that it's an original tone curve. It's not been edited in any way. We're going to click on the upper right corner. We're going to click and drag over to the left just before that big spike. Similarly, we're going to click down in the lower left and drag upwards slightly, and that has the effect of oversaturating the photo. So we're going to click here on the next one, which is color. We're going to drag down to global saturation, drag that down to -25 or roughly thereabouts. Then we're going to go over to this one, which is base, click on white balance, and boom, that image is done already. And now all we have to do is copy and paste those same values across. And you can see how quick and easy this is. This is the beauty of this. I love it. And then the last step, obviously, which is annoying, got to go back and click that white balance. So the white balance here will become a little bit more clear here in just a second as to what it actually does. And you might be able to tell on camera here that once it recalculates the white balance, it changes the colors very slightly. But it helps to kind of keep the colors similarly across the entire group. Now, I did this intentionally. I have my next picture here as kind of a, oops, I forgot to photograph it. And so I quickly had to photograph it as I was doing these other ones. So what if now I wanted to copy and paste the settings that I had from this group of pictures over to this one? Well, I was only now just working with my Kermit, so that technically the settings aren't the same. You could probably get away with just copying and pasting the same ones. Wouldn't hurt, but it's probably better to be safe than sorry. So I'm going to come back over here to my last image, and I'm just going to, again, hover my mouse over. I'm going to copy with Command-C or Control-C, and then paste over top of this one. And again, that's done. It's adjusted it. I'm going to click on the white balance, and boom, already done. So finally, let's go through this Miss Piggy one. I'm going to do it exactly the same way. This is how I do all of my editing. It's super easy. Click and drag to the left, click up, do color. We're going to desaturate just a little bit, about 25, go back to the white balance, and boom, we're done already. First one's done. I'm going to copy and literally paste all over these ones here. And as you can see, it's working, and go back and reapply my white balance, and that's it. Couldn't be any easier. 3 things. If I can do it, you can do it. Now, this next one that I have on here, I'm just going to finish up this group here. So let's go ahead and do this Ryan's World. I chose this one specifically to kind of show one other thing that you can do just to do some fine points. So this image, as you can see, is not too bad, but the figure itself, because it's black, you can obscure some details in the actual body. So if you're wanting to show the quality or the condition or maybe even some other pieces here, it's a little bit hard to tell. Now the procedure that I'm going to do is no different. I'm going to do the exact same thing, just change the tone curve a little bit, go back to my saturation, do the same thing. And we're going to go back to my white balance and go from there, okay? So here's the only thing that I might change about this image. In my tone curve, you can see here, this is the tone curve. Again, I've slid the top over to the left, and I've raised the bottom one up a little bit. So again, this spike on the left represents the white portions of the image, okay? This other spike down here is actually representing the action figure itself. So if the intent is to kind of lighten the action figure and make it a little bit easier to see some of the details, what you can do is I typically go about halfway in between where the spike is, and on the tone curve, click, and it'll actually make a new point, and then you move it up slightly, just slightly. And it'll actually lighten up the figure in the dark areas to show more detail within the body. Okay, so that looks good to me. It's a little bit different, so check out the difference between that and that. All right, it's very subtle, but you can see some more details that you weren't able to see before. So actually now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy over that, because that is a little bit preferable to me, and it gives the action figure a little bit more detail for people to see it. Now, you might notice this one here kind of looks a little bit overdone. It's not really black anymore. It's now kind of, it's not gray, but it's definitely not black. So what you can do to combat that is, this is the tone curve. Again, it's the same one that we've copied. You can take that new point that we just created and we can actually drag it back down. Now what's probably best is that if you just right click on it, it'll actually just delete that point. And now this image here looks a lot better overall. It looks more kind of balanced amongst the other ones, where this one isn't too blown out, okay? So again, the last thing that you probably need to do is come back and redo the white points or the white balance. That does help. You can kind of see the difference down here, is that here the white balance of the image is adjusted slightly warm, so the background to me appears slightly warm, and when you click on the white, it kind of levels that out, it cools it off, and you can kind of see the difference down here. This image here is a little bit warmer, that there's the kind of a yellowish tinge to the background, whereas this is a little bit cooler. There is a little bit of a cooler tinge, but I prefer that overall. And I do that on each and every one just to even out the photos, make them kind of more similar from group to group. Now, the final thing that I wanted to show you here was about the pants. If you ever try to take a picture of pants with an iPhone and you get really close to them, you might notice that the color changes drastically with the background, and that's because the white balance is automatically calculated on the phone. So you can see that the background here, where it does look kind of white, but it does have a kind of a color tinge to it. So just to show you what white balance does, and remember, it calculates white balance based on the last point that you selected. So when I come in here and do the white balance first, you can see here that it completely messes up the color scheme, and that's because it's actually looking at a blue area of the picture. So obviously that's not what I want, so I'm going to come back here and just click in any old white area, and that will reset to where my white balance wants to be. Now I can do my exact same procedure where I can come do my tone curve, and again this spike here is representative of the blue areas of the jeans. So we're not going to mess with any of that right now. So you could, in fact, mess drastically with the colors of the jeans, and that might kind of interfere with the actual representation of the jeans, and so that's why I typically don't do any color correction other than this very basic level, just because I don't want to kind of over-represent or under-represent something. I do have a disclaimer in my listings that say, colors could be off just based on your screen or different lighting conditions, and that typically is fine. So the last thing again is white balance. So just understand, look at the difference down here between these two. This is an uncorrected one on the right. You can see that there's a very yellowish tinge to that background, and that's because that was just taken straight out of my phone. And so the phone is doing its best to adjust for its white balance, but that's why this program is pretty handy. So when I click on white balance, click on a white image, it takes that hue, that yellowish hue away. And now I can do the rest of my tonal adjustments on my jeans. And I do, again, this very same thing for every image. And if I have groups of images, obviously this is just one, I will copy and paste throughout the group. You may need to make other adjustments, very minor adjustments, when you copy and paste as a whole like that. But for, I would say, 97% of my pictures, I don't need to go back and do any more adjustments. So that looks better to me than it did before. So the final step in all this is, once your photos are all edited, is to come back into that Lightroom or that Darktable module. We're back here in the catalog. I'm going to click on one. I'm going to hit Control-A or Command-A on a Mac, and it's going to select all of them, and now I'm going to export. Now I do have my export location automatically in there. You will have to set that up before you export. I am exporting with JPEG 95%. Just kind of keeps the file size down a little bit. The very last thing while this is exporting, and it has done that first one, is I'm going to show a side-by-side comparison between this, which is the original one from my phone, and the one that I just exported. So let's go ahead and pull that up. So here is, all right, so the original one is going to be on the left, and the edited one is going to be on the right. As you can see, there are some dark values that aren't too bad. There are some color shifts, so obviously we have lost a little bit of saturation in the edited one. That can certainly be fixed by not desaturating all the way down to that 25%. Maybe in this case 20% would have been a little bit more true to life. This is certainly an acceptable color change that I am willing to make, especially for that more light and inviting image on the right. That's the one that I'm really shooting for. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Drop a comment below if you have any thoughts or comments or questions, and hopefully that you will utilize this workflow to make your pictures look even better. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that segment. Like I said, I've been wanting to make that for quite some time, and so I hope that you guys find that useful. So at this point, let's go ahead and jump over to the sales portion of today's video. So sales have been down, unfortunately. It's obviously the beginning of summer, and so sales aren't where they should be, but that's all right. Sales are going to be from June 2 to June 8, and as always, we start with eBay. We'll kick off the list with this vintage 1990 Donruss Oakland A's complete baseball team rack pack. This sold for $2.99 plus shipping. Next up, we had a pair of U.S. Army pins. This was a U.S. Army Ordnance Branch and U.S. Enlisted 1-inch circular insignia pins, and together these sold for $8.99 plus shipping. Following that, we had this vintage 1990 Marge Simpson 3.5-inch figurine. She was from Burger King and sold for $3.99 plus shipping. Next up was this pair of cinch pants. These were men's 40 by 30 relaxed fit dark stonewash denim jeans, and these ended up selling for $29.99 plus shipping. Next up was one of the 31 bags I just picked up. This was a 31 fold-up Timeless Beauty Cosmetics travel zipper bag, and this ended up selling for $14.99 plus shipping. We haven't had one of these in a while. This was a Gina sale. So for those of you who are new to the channel, our family friend Gina consigned just a ton of clothes with us. She got a bunch from HiBid or wherever she picked them up, and she gave them to us to consign for her. This was a new old stock Jones, New York, petite multicolor striped shirt. This ended up selling for $9.99 plus shipping. Next up was the best sale from eBay from this time period by far. This was the Lego Mixel Series 5. These were all 100% complete. There were 9 individual sets. They all had their instructions, an original poly bag, and together these sold for $124.99 plus shipping. Next up, we had this vintage set of 2 Ty Beanie Kids. They were the stuffed plush toys named Buzz and Ginger. They each had their tags, and together they sold for $11.99 plus shipping. Following that was this Great Courses DVD and workbook set. This was the Chamber Music of Mozart parts 1 and 2. This sold for $12.99 plus shipping. And our final eBay sale of today's video was this pair of Ariat men's jeans. These were the Ariat men's 38 by 34 M4 Coltrane Durango low-rise denim jeans, and these sold for $42.99 plus shipping. Like I said, not a whole lot of eBay sales going on, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and transition at this time over to Mercari. The first sale from Mercari was this vintage Star Wars Power of the Force Death Star Gunner. He was a loose 3 3/4-inch action figure, and he ended up selling for $3 plus shipping. Next up was this Ty Beanie Babies. This was a 1993 Chocolate the Brown Stuffed Moose. He ended up selling for $5 plus shipping. And the third and final sale from Mercari during this time period was this 2013 Sanrio Hello Kitty. It was a 5.5-inch girl's wristlet zipper coin purse, and it sold for $7 plus shipping. And last but not least, we'll transition over to Poshmark, where we have a single lonely sale for us to show you, and it's this. This was for a pair of women's J. Crew size 0 green and yellow floral print chino shorts, and these sold for $19 plus shipping. So at this point, guys, I'm going to go ahead and close out the video. If you enjoyed those sort of photography techniques, go ahead and drop me a comment below and let me know what you think. If you enjoy this sort of reselling content overall, consider subscribing to the channel and especially like today's video as well, because it really does help us out. So with that, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end, and I'll catch you on the next one.